Okay, so I'm gonna take a look at nearly all of these. I'm gonna try to keep them all together, themed, like theme-wise together. But if I'm scattering in between fundamentals and you feel like you're in like that boat ride from Willy Wonka, I'm very, very sorry. All right, so let's take a look at this piece. This piece is a bit hard to deconstruct because there's just so much going on. But the first thing that pops out at me is the contrast between the blue light and the warm light. So what I'm going to do over here is show that the universal light for the world around them is blue. And that's what needs to dominate anything that is facing that section. So the dress, everything. And anything that is turned, this is the wash of the environment, anything that is turned away from that universal, facing the secondary, which we're treating as a primary in this localized region right here, this gets the warms, right? So I'm just trying to show how the universal value, the wash, is dominating here. Okay, so just that alone, let's take a look at that. Just this correction. Everybody focus. Moderators, you know what to do. So before, after. So now we've responded to this big blue light bulb here that had no effect on anything nearby. And this big blue light bulb is in charge of the color in the air, the color of the atmosphere, the color of the air, the color of the fog, the color of the darkness, the night, all of that is being washed. So what I'm doing is inadvertent, I hate that word, I'm kind of like indirectly showing where the areas that are getting warmth by applying the blue. Okay, so I'm not oversaturating anything that the yellow touches. I'm doing it in the opposite way. I'm bringing in blue to accentuate the orange. So now I'm going to bring that orange back in a new layer and just take a look. Before, after. Do you see what happened? We had a wash. And if they're creepy little specters or whatever, or some kind of like Dark Souls enemy you gotta beat or something like that, then sort of wraith, then you have to make sure that they're lacking all color, any warmth at all. Just cinematically, you need to keep warmth away from them. They have a green. The green isn't the wash. Nighttime, when we think nighttime, when we're painting basic nighttime colors, or in children's books or anything where you're boiling down everything to its most basic form, we don't use green as the wash for nighttime scenes. We use blue. So that's what I'm doing here. If it's too blue for you, you can desaturate it, but it'll still stay cool. Alright, so over here what I'm going to do now is bring in a little bit more orange. Anything shiny needs to get boosted as well. So bringing in this dodge tool. So that's getting a boost. Boost, boost. This is not facing it. This is facing away. This is only getting some light. But this dude right here, this sword, is getting some. You're not casting nearly enough shadows. So this is a shadow here that's needed. Anything that looks away from the light source, so any part of the cube that faces away, so there's a cube for the forearm. That gets the blues. Any part of the face that looks away. So his face doesn't just turn orange, it just gets its skin tone value back. Because our faces don't turn orange when the sun shines on them. It brings out the orange in our face, which is only so little. Really, skin tone is very pale, even if you're dark skinned. Not fully black skinned, but dark skinned. Olive, you separate it from the rest of the blood surrounding it, all the capillaries and whatnot, and all you get is like a really pale yellow, or a pale brown yellow or something like that. So at its most base state, skin is very, very desaturated. So anything that looks away from all of this brightness gets the yellow. You get the cool, the warm version of green, then the cool version of green. So the yellow that is, the green that is closer to yellow than closer to blue. So that green doesn't really get to be actually green. It becomes a shade of yellow. And every one of these little pieces here needs a little bit more white to it. Anything that faces the... But this is not the biggest problem. The environment, the way you're seaming everything together, is not the biggest problem. After all of that, this does need to get desaturated. All this excess yellow is not going to dominate the wash of the nighttime scene. All right, so this is all you get. All of this lightness on the shirt, on the tunic, completely goes down. But yeah, this isn't the only problem here. Can anyone tell me what the other problem is? If this was a scene in cinema, what would be the next biggest problem? So I'm laying some yellow here, and by erasing away, I'm casting some shadows. Can anyone guess what the issue is? So just really roughly. His weight seems really unbalanced to me. So there's that, and a very stiff pose, but that's not the biggest issue. What's he looking at? Okay, so the floor beneath them gets some of that yellow, but not all of it. Just a small little spotlight. Okay, so we're taking care of all these light problems. This fire needs more yellow. Okay. Rule of thirds, lighting, composition, where he's facing compared to the enemies. Excellent, Amy. So where he's facing compared to the enemies is just completely off. He's also a little bit too high on the canvas. But let's take a look at the before and after, just with the lighting changes. Before, after. Before, after. It's no longer just like a super wash over everything. Now the light is localized, directed to a specific source, and that's where all that orange is coming from. Before it was a free-for-all. There's just orange. Oh, I just, there's a fire, I have to put orange. You didn't think about the fire as being an actual location in the environment, and making sure that that location is reinforced with everything. So you've got all this detail here in areas that should not be detailed, so I'm completely just smudging these areas out. This area is too high up in the canvas to get all that. You're using a stamp brush for the fire texture. All of that is way too high up to be getting anything like that. But the biggest problem is none of these light issues, really, if you could pinpoint it to one thing. It's the fact that his expression is just completely looking away. He's just like looking at a corner or something instead of looking at his enemy, or at least looking at the impact right here. When you're in battle, when you're in a sword fight and your eyes are looking in that direction, you're going to lose that sword fight. Okay, and then liquefy. I've got to get his, you might want to bring in some of the fire's color into his eyes. But I need to make him look more angry before I decide on where his eyes look. And his eyes are very small, and like, you'd have to really zoom in. Right, give him more of a twisted... Just heard the sound of the swords clashing and the heat sound, that whirring sound of the fire and the flame, and it's a flame. It's a sword that he himself is afraid of, even though he's wielding it because of its power. So see that before. You had all these indications that he was angry, but you really didn't make him angry. And when we make a character angry, let me try that again with the eyes. We really open the eyes up. We see more of the white above the eyes. I have to zoom out and try all that again. His head, his whole head is very small compared to his body. And his face as well. I think that is what we need. There we go. And his face is just too small. See how small it was before? Okay, see how timid he looked? He was like, "Oh, senpai. Oh, senpai, no." I was like, "Motherfucker, how dare you touch me?" Sorry, that was really stupid. Okay, we have a little bit more. I'm so sorry, mods. Alright. I'm giving him more of a crease because of the anger. And then, but what if he was actually scared? If he was actually scared, he looks scared still. But if he was like, "Oh, senpai face," no. No. I've had a lot of people argue back with my critiques, and they say, "Oh, that was my intention." Oh, I intended that. No, you didn't. You didn't intend for him to look like, you thought that you were doing a good expression that equaled both the anger and the fear. But in the fact that you're looking this way, and the face is looking this way, the eyes are looking this way, away from the enemy, and he looks kind of sad, but he also has angry mouth. No, this was not intended. So this is what you couldn't pull off. All right? Yeah, senpai face. Or Yamete senpai. Don't ask me how I know that. All right? So, before, after, and then the localized light. And then what I'm going to try to do now is just center it back. So he should be somewhere here, and the wraiths should be somewhere. Mother effer. And the wraiths should be somewhere there. In fact, I'm going to leave this guy where he is. So, oh, senpai. His sword is senpai, yeah. Alright, so I hope this helps you figure out what it was that was bothering you about this painting, because you said something was still bothering you about it. So it was a combination of about 100 things. And those things, I mean, I could say prescribe a dose of form studies in the morning and at night, but some of these things take time to just see on your own. Okay, so before, ooh, Yamete senpai. I'm so sorry. I don't know why I'm making fun. I'm so sorry. That was so rude of me. I'm such an asshole. Sorry, it's just his face is perfect. After. Yeah. Away with you, foul demon. And he does have fear in his eyes. Look at the fear. That's fear in his eyes. I gotta go back and edit this. I gotta make sure I'm not being an asshole. I'm sorry. It's not me being an asshole. I'm just really in pain. I'm in a lot of pain today. So I'm just adding some final little pieces here. Right there. Just some more fear. Right, so do you get what I mean by him being too high up on the canvas? And I left this guy up there so he could fill the canvas up there. And do you see all that blue that you had? That you didn't have, sorry. Alright, so color layer. Any way that he's turning away from the light means more blue and less light. So it's both a blue that I'm adding to the far half of the chest plate and a shadow. You see how I'm introducing that shadow as he's rotating away? You see how his chest plate is circular? It's a cylinder, so it rotates away. And that's why it gets more blue. But even your secondary bounce light here, that's looking completely away from the fire, is getting more fire. How is this orange? Okay? So you need a bit more yellow or white or some sort of hot white on the fire just to push it one last time. So I'm going to desaturate just along the insides till it's like white-ish. So it actually behaves like a fire. So white hot, remember that term? How do you combine different facial expressions? Well, you have to start by doing some face studies first. The fingers around the sword are okay. They should not be, they should just be blue. They should just be off into the blue. They're not under the fire. They're in the shadow the fire is casting. So they're way too orange. I just would darken them just like that. I mean, they don't have any direct exposure to the flame. The top piece of the thumb, maybe. Just here at the top. Maybe the top half of the cylinder of each finger, but only so much. The dominant color is still the blue of the sky. I have other suggestions. You've got compositional negative space that is taking up all the attention of the room. So you want to make it look like it's a more dangerous scene. Bring this guy's silhouette over here. Fill this space, because right now he feels like he's in a safe distance. I don't want the audience to feel safe when looking at this painting. You've got a very, very geometric, blocky, compared to all this back and forth detail and wispiness that's happening. This looks more like a Minecraft silhouette, some sort of Minecraft game silhouette. Okay, so we've got this dude. God damn it. And then we've got the sword here. You might want to make this sword point up this way. So you're creating more of like a triangle. You don't want those triangles to meet up all the way up here for this cobweb. It really is not that important. All of this should not be pointing to just a cobweb. It should be pointing to something else. Right, so this negative space right here bothered me. This is okay because you got a nice little pillar there with some really muted texture. I really like this rusted texture. You got that Minecraft silhouette that's completely breaking any advanced technology that you are representing in architecture. And in costume design, you're just showing me these really, really elementary kind of feudal age silhouettes and things. Even older than the feud, like Stone Age. Not even. Maybe older than Stone Age, younger than Stone Age, older than feudal. Kind of, you know, this blocking. Very, very basic. What I would want to see is something that is reflecting the amount of intricacy represented in all of this design, the art of the age. So maybe showing like a cool looking tower or something like that. Maybe some broken down towers here. Maybe some like weird attempts at keeping it to stand, so some weird pillars. Maybe like a church steeple, or I don't know, something. I don't know what that would look like. That would do better to represent this guy's world, because you've given me all this detail and you've given me nothing back here. And that nothing back here is going to get noticed because that nothing is pointing directly to the light source in the region, which is this moon, which you're allowed to make bright, by the way. Bring it some texture. Anything that moon is touching is going to give it illumination. So all of the shiny parts of his armor, all of these pieces here. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? All right, so before, after. Really, the face is the biggest thing that bothered me. And if the pale face is bothering you, this is nighttime. Okay, this is still nighttime. The blush of his beautiful lip gloss is not going to show. All right, let's take a look at this dragon scene. So this person is working from the conversation with a dragon, and this whole piece is very, very messy. It's messy for one big reason. You don't know how to work with universal light source. You don't know how to work with environment light yet. You don't know how to think about, hey, what's the primary and how does it affect anything on a universal basis? So I'm going to use darken brush mode and darken this whole dragon. You've got a lot of lines in here, buddy. You need to let go. You need to let go of these lines right now. Right, yes, now. Right, yes, right away. Why am I darkening him? Because there's a big ass fire behind him. It's a nighttime scene. And nothing should be brighter than that primary universal light source that you have as the designer thrown in the background. I'm keeping some of these lines on the outside because that is going to represent the secondary rim light, the primary rim light that we're getting out of this silhouette. But this is a silhouette. The fact that you didn't recognize it as a silhouette means you have a lot of issues left. And you don't do enough form studies. All right, so don't jump at the next chance you get, you know, to draw a picture. I mean, it's great. This is why we're artists, so we can draw stuff. When we're inspired, we draw. And that's acceptable, but you didn't have the most basic recognized, like you didn't recognize the most basic primary principle right here, which is when a light source is behind an object, it is cast in shadow. Don't tell me there was a universal light source nearby allowing us to see the dragon, because again, you've pretty much damned yourself in the fact that you cast the shadow downward anyway. So it means you do know that the primary light source is behind him, and that's why you've cast this shadow. Alright, so there are other ways to make this character visible, and it's exactly the same. This is why I chose both of these paintings today. You have to choose the color wash first. The color wash that came before the fire started, and that's the color you chose right here. So that's the color we give to the shadows. All the shadows get this. All non-shadows get... What did the non-shadows get? So everything that is a shadow becomes cool. Anything that is outside of a shadow gets... And then you've got all of this, detail right here. It's really strong. I'm just blurring it out, weakening it a little bit. So all the non-shadows, yes, thank you, Tom, they get warmer. Alright, so we've established the most basic rule. We've set it up. Let's reinforce it. So there's a big ass fire back here. It causes some glow, so we're glowing back the fire. And yes, it's still early, so you have a lot of time left to correct a lot of these issues. But if you're already this early and you've decided on some lines, you're going to have a lot of trouble, lots of trouble. If the wings are attached to the dragon, so we've got the wings like a bat, these are the hands, and then he's kind of doing this, so how would that look? So he'd have something like that, and something like that. So these pieces would go all the way up. Just like that on the dragon, okay? Corrected that silhouette, and now because we have probably a moon nearby or something like that, we can use that Moonlight color, just like we did in the previous painting, to show anything else that's not being touched by the fire. So right here, there's fire outside of this cast shadow, but within the cast shadow, we stay blue. Anything that is not being touched by the flame, that is not illuminated by the flame, that has no flame near it, gets a little bit blue. You've put orange even on the shadows, and that's why this looks like a cheesy dodge tool job. All right. So what am I doing here? Still figuring out where there are blues and where there are oranges. It doesn't matter if it's a pink dragon. At nighttime with this light source that is so hot and warm, like a fire, a big blazing fire, things are only going to be either orange or blue. And this is a very basic rule, very, very basic rule. So I'm going to run one more. It's very monochromatic at night. It tends to be very, very difficult to tell which color is what. Like the Game of Thrones dragons, you can tell which one was the green one or the blue one in that dark cave, even so close to the fire. You really couldn't tell. You'd have to look kind of closely. The dragon's foot doesn't look like it's rested because you kind of lost the heel. But it does look like it's rested on the foot. So I read your little concern here. You thought the dragon's foot wasn't looking like it was sitting directly on. So now what I'm going to do is warm down or warm up everything that is being touched by the fire. And I'll show you the before and after. So this very, very basic change is needed first, before you do anything else. Okay, so I'm just showing where the spikes are for the dragon. And now, I'm going to use dodge tool very carefully. I'm going to try to show you where we can have some light all across the dragon's face. Mid-tones. And these are all going to be cool colors. And some of that environment from behind will come right through the web of the wings, which will be cooler. Warmer, sorry. Alright, as for the composition, big problems. You are using a tile, almost tile, frame. Sorry. And it's very, very minimizing. It's just inhibiting the success of this scene. You want the dragon to take up a lot of the space because he's an enemy. Man, shut up. Just like that. So I want his feet to kind of just reach the floor, just like that, so he looks a little bit more dangerous. So, what next? Now we need to darken things according to the closeness of the light to the light source. So, darkening the edges, darkening this dude. All of this here needs to be darkened. And where we do have these explosions of light, they need to happen behind. So you're saying, hey, you know, this is a painting about dragons, and it's becoming less and less about dragons as the critique continues. Why? Because that's how it is. You paint the world before you paint the objects in the world. Doesn't matter if it's God himself that you're painting. You have to paint the light source first. You have to decide where the main light source is coming from. What's allowing us to even see these objects? So there's a cast shadow of the extra little pieces of his back right on the wing, so we don't get the full subsurface scattering. There's cast shadows here too. Alright, so I don't care if it's a dragon, I don't care if it's a fairy princess, the light source comes first. If you've chosen a silhouette, if that's what you're interested in painting, then you have a responsibility to find what's causing this silhouette. If it was my painting, if you told me, hey, I'm going to be painting something where a dragon is slowly inching up closer to a guy defending a town, or a knight defending a town, I would start with a very, very low horizon line. I would choose some really scary, like a strong... There's someone knocking on a door, and I don't know if they're knocking on my door. A very, like, strong angle for the dragon. Probably very, very low to the ground like a worm. And then the back leg is kind of crushing a house. So I'll start with the back leg, and then wing number 1, and then wing number 2. And then for scale, of course, you have like a really low guy with like a lance or something. He's pooped his pants. There's a little bit of poop on the ground. All right, so you have to like keep readjusting. Maybe make him a little bit smaller just over here, holding on to his lance. Maybe make the head a little bit smaller, like he's ready to eat. Smoke or that fog is filling up the lower region, so you're hiding a lot of the ground to make it look like this guy's really lost his footing or is about to. And then behind here you can draw some of the buildings that are falling apart, and then you have all of that. You want the dragon to take up all the space in the painting. So how would we really do that here? All I see here is like one shot of one scene from one reference that you got for the dragon, and another random scene here. The lighting isn't in a select... Over here there's more breathing room, so we can really bring in some environment lighting to reveal this guy or this guy. It could be the fire from his mouth right here. So we have all this fire. This is what's revealing his sword. This is what's revealing all of this character. And then behind is where we're getting all of that madness. And that madness it's a fire, but it's not bigger than the dragon. Over here, the fire seems bigger than the dragon. He doesn't seem very scary to me. He seems, I don't know, I can take care of this. I mean, easy. Just do a little bit of that dragon words from Skyrim and you can kick his ass. But over here, I want it to look like he's a very big dragon, and the fires are very small, and everyone is small around him. So we're keeping the fires low. Only slightly shining above and behind him, not all the way above him, which is minimizing the size of the dragon. So you're still early on in this painting. This is as much as I can do to salvage what you've done, but I consider this a thumbnail. This is one thumbnail among many. You had way too much happening. You had the wrong canvas size. You had the wrong lighting. And if it was a red dragon, you really chose the wrong time of day to show off its redness. The light wasn't even directly on it. There wasn't a fire in front of him so we could see all that beautiful red. So he's going to be a purple dragon at night. So if he's a red dragon, I don't know if you wanted red. I don't know if this is all red, but if you wanted a red dragon, he's going to look purple at night because there isn't enough light source nearby to reveal all the orange in that red formula. Okay, so this is a big, big lesson to learn when it comes to thumbnailing. You haven't thumbnailed. You haven't drawn any thumbnail. You went straight for the fun stuff. You haven't deserved the fun stuff yet. You don't deserve the fun stuff if you haven't even considered what kind of light source you're dealing with. You don't deserve to jump straight into the painting and start having fun if you haven't even, graduated into at least 3 stages of thumbnailing. So it's a very bad framing job. It's very bad camera work at the end of the day. No matter what you do to fix, you can bring all the fundamentals in here, you're still going to have that glaring massive problem of where you decided to put the dragon and his size and where the lighting is for him. So we've balanced out the environment and we've controlled 2 of the main light sources, but it's still having a lot of trouble. Thumbnails are a great place to make mistakes without the responsibility of full render. This piece is a little bit off. It's kind of confusing me. So what we have here is wing number 1, and the wing looks like it's like that. So that's not a bird wing. A bird wing has that thingy at the top, that weird thingy, the joint. And what I'm seeing is a joint attempt here, so what we have is in fact this when we're looking at a bird wing, which means the other wing should have done that, which would have hidden his face, which is why you cropped this whole thing. So you probably went straight into the drawing without even testing out different, I don't know if you did, but it looks like you didn't test out any gestures. So you've cropped all of this extra bit of the wing just so we can see his face. This right here is a telltale sign you weren't planning anything. You went straight for the face. You're probably doing a really cool face, and you said, hey, I'm going to turn this into a masterpiece. Let me search up some cool mythological creature I could develop this into. That's not how, that's not successful. This means a lack of success. It's an awkward positioning of the wings. The perspective is thrown off. My mind knows it shouldn't be able to see the face, but it sees the face. And the anatomy of the far wing is also a little bit off. Then we've got another situation where the eyes are not looking directly up. The eyes should be looking a little bit more something like that towards the character. And you've got this little dimple. It's making him look like he's like smiling. So we were going to get rid of that dimple completely. It's not some sort of pivotal design unit. And if he was smirking, he would probably be smirking here. If you really wanted to smirk, you would make it develop through the entire structure of the mouth instead of depending on a little wing. So get rid of that completely. So this is a whole bunch of wing, a whole bunch of wing missing. And if you did have to keep it like this, then you have the option of doing the wings like this. So you've got one wing tilted kind of toward. You know what I do? I do that instead. Toward the camera, so you don't have this draping of the wings anymore. You can have a little bit of like wing here and there, but we still need that. And the other wing still needs to have that shape to it. All right. You save an arrow to the knee with proper pre-planning. So what happens now is, yeah, your mind exceeds your grasp. Exactly. If that's what you meant by your mind knows that it's seeing something it shouldn't see, and that's why it looks awkward. If that's what you were referring to, but yeah, I agree. Really cool concept. I mean, I haven't seen anybody try this in a while. Like some sort of harpy design. You're hiding a lot of the costume and a lot of the foreshortening when it comes to the arm. So we're seeing the wings right now and the beak as the only carriers of this warrior type, which tends to be a very, very symptomatic of masterpieces that happen too soon. What happens when masterpieces hit, right? So this is costume design. I want you to try to invent some kind of extra mutation aspect to the character, to the creature, right? Now this is a creature. Character / creature design. It's a mutation, it's a hybrid of two creatures. So what we need to see is either some kind of feathering around the forehead just to show that he's turning into that creature. Show where that eagle-like Neanderthal brow happened, that really strong eyebrow. Also would not diminish the character's design. Show some strange bone structure, maybe a really, really low chin, just like that. It's not going to be ideal beauty, but it's half a man. That low chin like that, pushed back, is going to make him look even more like a bird. And then you've got the costume, so where the human is. So the human comes in the way they dress their hair. So maybe he does have all that hair. All these feathers are flying everywhere, but the hair is still intact. This is not possible. The hair would move way sooner than the feathers, which are much heavier than the hair, would move. Considering his wings are so big, that is. Okay, so we've got that. If you have to keep it like this, I would go back to the gestures. I would find a better angle to work with. The foreshortening of this spear is not accurate. So you've got the spear from front view. And then you've got what foreshortening does, which is exactly this. All right. So that's what this spear should have been doing. Something like that. We don't even see the other side, the other bend of that spear. We just see where all of this. This spear would be very, very close to the camera. It depends on, this is a symmetrical foreshortening, so it might have foreshortened more on one side than the other, but this spear needs to be much bigger if it's very close to the camera. Right now it looks like a staff than a spear. All right, good luck with that. And then we've got this piece. So let's talk about that whole silhouette thing that we talked about last time. You guys don't pay attention to your silhouettes when you're designing characters, which is why a lot of your art will always stay subpar. Planning is amazing. And if you don't want your art to stay mediocre or stiff or looked over or skimmed over by viewers and employers alike, you have to apply yourselves a little bit more. So let me show you what I mean by this and how unsynced the costume is and the character is with the character story, or the design units use, the symbols and the gesture. They're all unlinked. If you keep them unlinked, your art will always stay mediocre. If you don't think your art is worth that extra planning stage, your art will always stay that, you know, like a cheap feeling or weak feeling, or there's always something nagging you that's missing. I used to think, oh yeah, I'll just jump right into my painting and it'll figure itself out in the end. All right. So let's take a look. If you were to see this one silhouette, okay, so I'm looking at this girl, and we were losing a lot of what she was really posing, but her pose was sassy. I'm pretty and I got titties and I know it. All right, so that's what she's kind of doing here. Would you? So let's say you're having this. You have like a mood board, and you've got all of this going on. So let's give it some lashes. Finish up the face silhouette. And then beside it, you said, hey, I'm going to combine this pose with a missing nose, a skull. So that's basically what you were doing. A hook, whatever, like that. Some other like creepy zombie things, so some ribs, some side teeth. All right, would you really combine these two? The way you can is if she was a sassy zombie. But a sassy zombie, we see more, and a sassy, sexy zombie, we would see more as in costume design. When you have a zombie that's falling apart and their nose is missing, this is probably one of the most scary things to do when you're making the nose missing. You think about the design of Voldemort, think about skulls and how they're always used as a way to represent the lack of life, the dying, the dead, and the enemy. We've covered this in the villain challenge. You can just search up the history to catch that class. So what you're doing here is you're giving me sexy pose. Hey, I'm a sexy, but you're using one of the scariest units in character design is to make the nose missing. It is probably the freakiest one, second to or similar to the stretching of the mouth. When you make a mouth smile ear to ear is probably one of the scariest things you can do for character design. It makes people feel uneasy. So you've completely made her miss her nose. She's deteriorating, she's rotting alive, but she's posing very sexy. So I'm seeing this as a character that represents pollution or the death in the deep or some kind of, this is very, very gory, but she's posing like a sexy, like a selfie pose. Why is that a problem? It's a problem because it doesn't match. If you were a demon mermaid, you wouldn't pose sexy. It's so outside of what the environment is. And this isn't some sort of funny little character design or skin. You've given me like dead bodies floating in the sea. She's killed people, but she's posing for a selfie. So this is the problem. You didn't do any kind of silhouetting. You didn't, if you want to make her look scary but deadly, but also a little bit sexy, give her a couple of zombie boobs, and that's all you really need. That's all the amount of sex left behind after her nose got chopped off in a battle with some knight that she probably eventually killed, or after she nearly got fished by men. She hates mankind, clearly. So these are the issues that we're facing today with our art. A lot of students don't think that their art is worth all this pre-planning, and you need to start. If you're at a point where you can render a face this well, you are not exempt from this harsh critique. You are probably deserving of a harsh critique, and even more harsh critiques, because look at how well you draw. So you have a responsibility. If you can take the time to learn how to draw a face this well, you can take the time for a 2-second silhouette gesture experimentation. So you can combine and succeed in this illustration. This is a full illustration. This is what we work for. This is what we are, illustrators. And this you've completed it from corner to corner. You've completed this painting, but you're lacking this humongous design effort and this design principle, which is the pose and the gesture should reflect the characterization. You shouldn't leave it to costumes to carry the painting. Just to save it, if she's some sort of cute little character for a game, give her back her nose. She needs it. If she's going to stay a sex symbol, she's going to need it. She's going to need her nose back. And her face is very masculine, and you should probably just completely get rid of this. Give it to her as like some sort of weapon instead. She uses it to kill men. Her face is very, very masculine. The size of her mouth is very, very big as well, which has added to the horror factor. She's got a very big mouth. Saggy eyes. You've used a lot of that sickly. Again, watch that video. Watch the villain challenge, and I talk about it a lot. This sickness, this lack of life is represented by anything that looks remotely like a skull's eye sockets. She's a villain. She's not a protagonist in any way. I would never see her as one. Maybe she eventually does something good in the story or the narrative, but big mistake. All right, so I hope that you can try this again in a new gesture. The head placement is really well done, so maybe you can just get rid of the body and try a new one. Try one that's a little bit more scary. What I would do is I would try a body gesture that looks like, here, let me move this down. Your art is worth it, is it not? I ask you all, if you agree, say yes. Is your art worth this extra little bit of design? Is it worth this extra even 5 minutes you can do it to plan? Is your illustration worth it? So I would make her maybe do something like that, where she does have like a bit of a sexy pose, but she's still a demon. She's still like a scary mermaid that feeds on the flesh of men. So she's maybe like just leaning like that, and she's got like some kind of lance as well, and she's kind of leaning on it, and she's smiling just a little bit, very, very proud of her kill. That would give it sexy instead of a selfie pose. And I would just make her hand over here kind of just like floating, doing nothing at all. And then you could show where the hook is. You can show her past pains. You can do that. You can show it somewhere around here. 2 seconds! Look at my messy lines. I didn't even try. I don't have to try. This is all just gonna, it's not final lines. They're not gonna be used for a final image or walk cycle or some sort of animation. This is all I need. If you ask me, I think your art deserved it. I think this face is so well done that I think you deserve to have, your character deserves this level of planning. I think so. You got a beautiful gesture here. And you've continued the scene, and now she looks a little bit more like she actually is very, very happy she killed someone instead of selfie time. All right? Because you're worth it. Exactly. What's that motto for? She also feels very, very short. Okay. This piece feels very, very awkward and stiff for one really big reason. When you're haunched like that, your shoulder line goes above your neck. You no longer see the neck. So she looked very, very stiff because you were showing that you're used to drawing heads like this. So when you're dealing with a very big perspective change, you don't really know what to do with the neck. The neck becomes hidden and the shoulders and the trapezius muscles go right above. Right, that's why she looked kind of awkward and stiff. Right, so it's like she had an indentation. This right here, what you drew, only happens when a character is like standing, facing the camera, and then leaning up, and then their hand is on some kind of tank. And then you have the other one doing that. So you do get to see some of the space in between the shoulders, but you don't get that full. So we have to hide some of it. Alright, so to take a look at any reference, when you have a character whose torso is facing forward, the torso box, so you've got like a rhomboid kind of character shape, sorry. Okay, so the torso's box, this is where the shoulder joint is. This becomes in front of the camera, so we don't end up seeing the cylinder of the neck. The neck is a cylinder. It faces toward the camera, carrying the head with it. And then that's the front box of the torso, and the camera's right here. The camera doesn't loop around, or whatever the word is, and bend and try to capture the neck. You're forcing the visibility of the neck. The camera doesn't see the neck. It just sees this line, this edge, and the shoulder. Okay? I love how Istebrak can bring an image to the next level with a single line. Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, any pose, anything other than that selfie pose. I just drew anything that came to me, but anything other than that selfie pose. All right, so this image here is got very, very big problems with lighting. Let me show you. So we have this color, and we've got this color, then we've got this color, then we've got this color, and then we've got this color, and all of these colors are exposed to the light. None of these have been adjusted because there's only one light source. It doesn't matter if you're drawing Amun-Ra or you're drawing, again, Jesus. It doesn't matter. Everyone is affected by the light the same way. So that means that all of the colors here that you've used to represent as the areas of the cube that face towards the light, you've used the wrong color completely. So if you grayscale, you don't have this color issue anymore because it actually looks like everything is balanced. So what you had, first of all, I am going to desaturate a great deal. So what you had is a different color for every spot. And the way you're drawing right now is as if you've chosen a color for the skin, you've chosen a color for the costume, color for the face, which is not the same color as the skin, and then you chose a color for the crown. So what happens is you're painting the light by choosing the color of the object. No, that's not how it works. You choose the color of the object depending on the color of the light. Write that back to me. So right now I'm like getting this yellow. I'm going to throw this yellow everywhere. Write that back to me, guys. You choose the color of the object based on the color of the light source. That subsurface scattering on his hand would not have been this strong. We start with this monochromatic power, the superpower of the light source's color. And just like we did with the dragon, just like we did with that wraith scene, we choose the color that is not going to be touched by light. What is the environment color? I actually recommend blue. This is something that Frank Frazetta did a lot. This is why I love his work so much, because he really, when he decided on a color for the anything that was non-light, he went for it. He got that color and really used it. And anything that was not touched by it, the nearby light source, was actually blue. It was just fully blue. He wasn't even being delicate about it. And that's why his work just drives me crazy every time, because I just love looking at it. So this blue color, I'm going to use on anything not touched by the light directly. a solid ass blue color, just this blue. So your color choice was very, very off and very, very troubled. And you'll see what I mean by the whole Frank Frazetta touch. You'll see once in a second. Anything that is not touched by that light gets blue. However, if you do have this subsurface scattering effect, it's just going to be the exact reaction. If he's blue, maybe he's a god, he gets to be blue. If he's blue, then he's going to combine that yellow color of the light source, the sun that he's holding, and that is going to combine with the blue of his skin. We're going to get a green, and that would be the subsurface scattering color. It's not just red. He doesn't have blood. He's a god. Okay. So that's the blue I'm going to use everywhere. All these clouds are going to get that blue, except for the clouds that are getting some light on them. Just take a look at that. Isn't that so pretty? That yellow is a little bit cheesy for me. I would choose a yellow or a light source color that's a little bit different. If you wanted to see what I mean by Frank Frazetta though? And if you wanted to go for more of a cool color value, then you could go for a different light source color. Okay, so let's try different light source colors. Let's try a pink, which is actually really cool. But it's a sunlight, never mind. It's a sun, right? Yeah, so you can't do that. And the next step would be the intensity of the light source. Forgot this was a sun. So I would make that white, and anything that looks directly at that sun gets more white to it. So this reflective piece right here. So Frazetta never got this effect because he couldn't work with metallics. He had these very base tones, which is why he was so amazing. He managed to get these amazing shines even though he was working with limited palettes, but limited material. But we get to spike that all the way up because of dodge tool. And then you've got that purple in the background, which I'm going to make a little bit more blue. All you need are two colors, that's it. And I'm going to get some more of that yellow and apply it to some of the clouds nearby. And maybe, just maybe, if we want to really have fun, we cast his shadow in the background. Wouldn't that be glorious? Get that darkened layer. And just grab some of that and just toss a nice little shadow in the background. Just like his shadow. And just wherever we can show a pattern of his shape on that shadow. This is all you need. This is more mature and has saved the painting more than all of the other colors you chose, which were useless. The fact that you chose many colors means you don't know how to shade those. You don't know how to choose colors for objects. How do you fix that? Again, decide where your light source is. Where's my light source? Look at all those colors you had before, and you didn't need them. When we grayscale, the picture was still successful. Why? Because you did all the fun stuff already with the form. You didn't need extra rainbow colors everywhere. We don't need the rainbow. We just need a couple of colors here and there, and that'll serve the purpose. Okay, so this is just some basic cleanup job. You could have, chosen another light source color, but honestly, in all honesty, you don't need any other color. You can, if you wanted to, stylistically bring in some cool looking purple or something like that. Just something like just around here, some kind of pink, just around the base to bring in another color. But it's at this point, everything is dominated by that blue or that yellow. As long as it passes through that blue or yellow filter. So let's take a look before. Do you see how confused all those colors were? They were very dirty. And as I said before, that yellow is a little bit too cheesy for me. I would just bring it down a touch so it looks like pencil crayons. That's the style you're kind of using, very Frazetta type. And I feel like this does more than that. Again, if you wanted to bring that pink in, bring it in carefully. Make sure that that pink that you brought in has gone through the blue filter. But you're talking about Amun-Ra holding the night and the sun and deciding when the sunrise and the sunset is. So I like this palette because it shows the night and day better than I like this one because it looks very messy. Okay. So that pink, again, you could have just laid it down as a stylistic thing. You could make it come up from the top. Maybe the sun is rising. So you got that pink from the top. Color. And you had like this, you had this pink coming up from the top just there. Son of a bitch. You could have done something like that. You still have the dominating blue value, and that red that you chose, that pink, is cool. You could have done that if you had to have that pink in there. Subsurface scattering, again, don't worry about that. This is just you forced an opportunity to use subsurface scattering, especially because there was pink on the other hand. Alright, so I'm just going to save the basic one for you and you can decide which one you want. So that's it for today. Do you guys have any questions at all regarding today's paint over? So now is a Q&A section. So class isn't done just yet. I'll answer some more questions for you guys before I go. Any questions at all? Ista, why did you desaturate it so much? Because the form was so successful on the grayscale stage, he chose some really great values, I desaturated it. Also, if you look at the grayscale value of these paintings, of this painting, let's grab one of these values. Let's grab this one. This one. How about this one? How about this one? Can anyone tell me what is the, I grabbed the light source value, my bad. Why did I desaturate it? These are values you chose. I'm looking at their position right here. Can anyone answer the question why I desaturated it? How about this value? How about this value? How about this value? How about this value? I desaturated everything because nothing is up in this value range other than these. And this does have saturation. I desaturated the light a little bit, but you can go ahead and saturate those areas if you want to. Again, I said it was cheesy, but that was my taste. You can do that if you wanted to. The reason why is because this area does get light, so the saturation is there from the light source. Saturation is how much light is in a color, basically. Whether or not the object is bright enough and is surrounded by enough light to reveal its actual color. I just saturated it because I think it looks great, closer to grays. I think it looks hot like this. But again, I thought that saturation was cheesy, but there was a very big fundamental reason why I desaturated in the beginning, and that's the fact that none of these values are allowing for saturation. When we grayscale, we're teaching ourselves that if we work with values that are too dark and bring in colors, we end up getting muddy colors. Muddy colors are colors that are forced in saturation even though they don't have the value high enough to reinforce the color. Colors come in grayscales, remember that. Beneath every color is a value. Write that back to me. It was close to the no man's zone, exactly. Just a little bit, just still a little bit pain. If we use an intense light source, are there any visual cues to give the viewers so that they know the image is intended to be full color and not a single tone, if that makes sense? An intense light source, visual cues, so the viewer knows the image is intended to be full color and not a single tone. There is the wash of the environment, what time of day it is. Nighttime always starts cool. If you want a successful nighttime scene, that's not too stylistic or abstract. Daytime, you can have all the colors you want. There is enough white light in the sky to allow for all those colors in that prism, which is the air. So I'm not really sure I understand your question though. Saturation requires color values. I missed it. Saturation, to feed a color, you need a light enough value. What do you think about my self-portrait? Just need 2 words, thank you. I'm not taking any more. Today wasn't about portraits, so I'll probably do more portraits coming up before I take my break. Istebrak, how do you start practicing silhouettes? Just by doing them, just by trying them. I did a lot of critique hours for character design scenes, for character design layouts back when all the challenges. So you just have to search up the challenge history. And I talked about breathing room. I talked about male versus female silhouettes, distributing body weight, making a character look like they're standing. Design the character with only the silhouette. I challenge you guys to do that. Design a character with only the silhouette. So that's basically how you study silhouettes. Try to push as much read and characterization as possible and narrative as possible with just the silhouette. That's an amazing challenge, because when you are allowed eventually to bring in detail and bring in grays and allow some light to shine on the character, you will have an amazing silhouette to back it up. It's just like a really well painted dragon painting on a really bad composition canvas. You can draw the most amazing hair and face, but if it's on a crappy silhouette, it's going to stay crappy. No matter how much glitter you toss and carving you toss on a table that has only 2 legs, it's no longer a table. Okay? You need to have that. I know that's the weirdest metaphor, but just bear with me. You need to have the structure successful, and that's how the structure is in the design, is in the anatomy, is in the balance, is in the standing pose, standing gesture, it's in the characterization of the gesture. Is it a sassy princess, or is it a stubborn, steadfast knight? You should be able to deliver all of that through the silhouette. How do you do thumbnails? By doing them. Basically, one solid sheet with many 980 by 1080 by 1920. I don't know, but like a cinematic framing. 19. Is it 19.5? 16.9? 6.9? Is it 16.9 or 6.19? Just the cinematic ratio, just like the size of your TV or monitor. Frame. And you just have 3 of those, and you just try the thumbnails. If it's a portrait thumbnail, you have a flipped 16 by 9, or a little bit more squared and tiled. A little bit, of course, it still has to be a rectangle. And you just try to balance the negative space of the background with the positive space of the character. More silhouetting, basically. Thumbnails are like silhouettes. What is a thumbnail, though? A thumbnail is a small practice version of the painting. It's a thumbnail, like a thumbnail. Version is small. Version like that. You probably thought I disconnected or something. Yep, it's just a bunch of small versions of the paintings, and you end up choosing one of them or you combine 2 of them, whichever one is most successful, or you can combine different pieces that were successful across different thumbnails. But what you're doing is you're trying 3 different versions of the same idea, so that you could experiment with and make mistakes early before you're trying the final draft. You don't have any planning and have not answered any design questions at all. So thumbnailing is a way to plan either landscapes, composition and canvas, and negative and positive space of a landscape or portrait before you start the draft. That's what a thumbnail is. When it comes to a glowing character, how can someone portray depth or foreshortening? A light source is a light source. Farther light sources dim than close-up light sources, which bloom and flood. So that's how you can create depth through a light source in different degrees of depth across the canvas. It's a prototype. Thank you. Exactly. Thank you very much. Okay, so I drew this Amun-Ra dude. I had so many colors because I wanted his local colors to change through the body. Was I thinking wrong? Yes, absolutely. When you decide on a character in an environment and you've drawn the sky, Jonathan, you have to have some kind of color to represent that environment. You can't have a sky and have all kinds of colors from different degrees of saturation distributed. That sky decides whether or not colors are visible, and it has decided no. There are no light sources nearby to provide enough saturation and value spike for each color. So if you're trying an orangey red, it's going to turn into a purple red. There isn't enough orange yellow light source in the sky to reveal that color. If you wanted to bring more of a palette, you didn't want it so monochromatic in areas, then you can again decide, hey, if this is a purple feather here, or if this is a red feather, make it a more purple feather. If this is an orange dress right here, orange and blue don't get along, and when you get rid of the orange, you're kind of left behind with a yellow, an off yellow, so that's the only color that you'd allow here, and even then it wouldn't be bright enough to allow that yellow, so it'll turn grayscale. A yellow skirt at night looks gray. There isn't enough saturation to allow that yellow through. It just depends on which color you want. If it's jewels, jewels are translucent and see-through, so they might be able to glow out and have subsurface scattering. So if these were jewels that were pink or purple, they might be able to get some light, but only in certain areas, especially the jewel directly having light pierce through it. Okay guys, have a great day. Bye-bye.